Welcome to Road to Redline, the #1 Porsche and Car podcast celebrating the people and the stories behind the world's finest sports cars. Road to Redline is presented by YouTuber and magazine editor Lee Sibley, serial owner and columnist Joe Williams, and 993 owner Andy Brookes. Three enthusiasts on a mission to open doors and bring you the best stories, secrets, and exclusives from the world of Porsche.
Today's guest is a little left field. It's the actor Seth Rogen. No, not really. It's actually Jay McToldridge, otherwise known as Players Jay. Jay is one half of the crew that have organised the Players Car shows for the last 15 years. He also fronts the UK arm of Wheel Pros, a wheel manufacturing empire in the US. Jay takes us through what it takes to organise a show such as Players, what makes a Players show car, his current 964 build, and deep dives into wheels. Let's begin.
Jay, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening on Road to Redline.
No problem. Glad to be here.
So this is going to be an interesting one that was teed up by Andy, really. I think mainly from dabbling with the wheels on his 993, was it not?
Yeah, I did buy a set of dodgy oval wheels from the man. But I thought it'd be quite good to get Jay on as sort of from the modified side of things, because I know that you've recently bought a 964. But obviously toyed a lot with modified cars over the years. I think there's quite a lot of our listeners that are into modifying stuff. They're not all the purists, but it might give, if there are a few purists, it might give them a bit of an insight into the sort of modified car scene as well.
Well, they'll hate it even more.
Might start a witch hunt.
I think there's good love for modified cars and modified Porsches on Road to Redline. I mean, all our cars are modified, aren't they, to one kind of lesser extent or another? So
They are, yeah.
Indeed.
I think that's the way the Porsche world is, isn't it, really? When you get down to it, lots of people modify. There's always talk of purists, but there's not that many of them.
Yeah, I mean, I came into it thinking, you know, there's a lot of purists and it's very much kind of one way or the other, but it does seem to be quite a sort of open sort of community, so to speak, that people are into it. So, yeah, I've been quite surprised by it.
I was going to say, what's your expectation versus reality of like the Porsche world and the Porsche people and whatnot?
Well, mine is, you know, it's not that broad because I haven't done any sort of Porsche club, GB stuff, any of that. The only events I've really been to are Frank's events up at Box and Gas. Yeah, which is, and that's it really. I've done, I bought tickets for Rennsport last year and didn't even go because the weather was horrific. But yeah, so I haven't really delved into it too much. You know, we were going to put on a show last year, a Porsche event, but obviously didn't. And that was kind of the whole trying to bring it all together, not the whole, if it's air cooled, you're at one show, if it's water cooled, you're at another. It was kind of trying to bring everything together, which I still want to do. It's just, you know, obviously in the world we live in at the moment, who knows what's happening.
Yeah. That was going to be at Goodwood, wasn't it? Flat 6, was it?
Yeah, Flat 6. And yeah, we secured a date for Goodwood. We've still got one penciled in for this year. But again, you know, we're just sort of like everybody else, just waiting for the world to return to some sort of normality.
Absolutely.
Is that going to be aimed at modified stuff, or is that going to be a free-for-all for everything?
It's a free-for-all. As long as it's got a Porsche badge, then you are more than welcome. It was kind of that whole idea was to get everybody involved. If you're, you know, a purist, come down and experience modify. I mean, I knew that by us putting on an event, it would end up being probably more modified based. But no, it was definitely open to everyone.
Should we go back to sort of your starting, well, what Players is, and how that sort of matured over the years? I think you sort of started it 15 odd years ago.
Yeah, so massively into VW since I was a kid. So it was my first car was a Mark 1 Golf. And then it was kind of pre-social media. Facebook was kind of just around, just as we started, and it was forums. And back then, Edition 38 was a huge forum for VW nuts.
Yeah.
And I'd built a kind of reasonably well-known Mark II Golf that sounds horrific now. It had gold supercharged VR6 engine and
wicked.
Right up Lee Street.
Yeah, love it.
And it won a few prizes, and I was good friends, still am, with a guy called Richie Payne, and his dad I'd done quite a few cars with his dad, Tony, and through them I met Carl Taylor, who I'd kind of knew via the forums, but hadn't really sort of kind of spent. We actually spent a lot of time trying to outbid each other on eBay on absolutely ridiculous things. I remember we were once both bidding on a Bentley key. Neither of us had a Bentley. And I still have never had a Bentley, and neither has he. But we were bidding on a Bentley key because he was going to put it on a Mark III key, and I was going to put it on a Mark II key. It's utterly stupid. And then we did the same thing on a set of, I think it was 996 GT3 seats, and we just kept outbidding each other on it. We didn't know we were outbidding each other. It was only when we became friends later that we realised that. And so ended up, we went to Worthersea in 2006, sitting outside the casino bar, and just sort of hatched a plan to try and do something that was a little bit different. And that's kind of where players started.
Was it like, organising that first show? I mean, was that an absolute nightmare? Was it quite chilled and easy? I mean, you hear mixed reports on people that do shows as to how much headache's involved.
Looking back, it was easy. We came back from Worthersea in May, and we put our first event on in September. I literally just went, I thought, right, where am I going to start? What do we want to do? First of all, I went to, I can't remember, it's where Top Gear is based.
Dunsfold,
that was it. They were not interested, as most places aren't when you mention modified cars. And I always used to try and spin it and go, it's mainly VWs, because people tend to think that modified VWs is totally different to sort of modified Fords and, stuff like that.
Less wheel spinny.
Yeah. Kind of, we're VW guys. We're all right. But they just sort of turned me away. I was like, no, go away. And then I went to North Weald, which obviously was relatively local to me. And actually Carl, because Carl was living in Essex at that point. And the guy was up for it. He's like, yeah, do you want to rent? I think at that point, we only rented the small hangar. And we were lucky. We were both relatively well known on the forums. We kind of tried to really go against the grain and calling it players, but saying that we had a VIP area. And we really played on the whole, like, sort of flash, like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And we got a lot of hate for it because you had to apply to get into the show. So you never had to apply to get into any other shows back then.
Yeah.
But we said, no, you've got to apply. And that, that caused a real storm on certain forums. We got absolutely rinsed for it. But it worked. We were really lucky. We had great weather. And then from there, it just took off. And that first show was VW only. It was actually called VW Players. But because I've always had other cars, I kind of let a few people come in that didn't have VWs. And that was what really started the whole sort of brand. It was like, right, after that, we dropped to the VW the next year and decided to sort of make it all marks, really. But it just had we had an ethos, which I could never describe to anyone because I don't really know what it was. But myself and Carl had to think the car was cool to get in. It was as simple as that, really.
Lee, you've been a few times, haven't you? How did you get in?
Yeah, via the back door, I think. Yeah.
When was the first time you went, Lee?
I was just trying to think, actually, while Jay was chatting there. Probably it's either 07 or 08, or I was definitely 09 and 10. I'd probably say 8, 9, 10, or maybe 07. I can't actually remember when it started, Jay. I think 07 was a bit early, wasn't it? Or
are you in your trousers by then, Lee, or not?
It's still spotty, definitely.
06 was the first one.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, it was the first one I went to. I went to it in two capacities. The first few years, I was just like a punter. I had a Mark IV 6N Polo. Went along with that. My brothers and I, as we were saying just before we started the Red Button, that lived in Essex, grew up in Essex. So for us, it was a lovely jaunt. We went down to Northfield Airfield. I knew it from back in the day because I think my mum used to go to a market there.
Yeah.
But we've turned up and we were like, bloody hell, this is just different gravy to any other show. My brother and I were quite into the VW shows at the time. But Players was totally different to anything else. For a start, it was on a concrete floor rather than just chucked on a grass field. And we were like, this is nuts. And I think what I liked about it is the vibe. And it doesn't matter what preparation you do for a show, it's only as good as kind of the people that turn up, and that creates the vibe, the atmosphere, or whatever. And you can't fake that sort of stuff. And I don't know what it was. I'm not just saying it because you're on the line here, but it was just so different to everything else that was there. It was just a lot more relaxed. I personally didn't feel like there was any sort of snobbery that other VW shows had, where it's just like, well, you don't own a Golf GTI, so you're some sort of like second class citizen. So yeah, loved it. But yeah, Players was different gravy. And actually, like you were saying, I think I went to the first year where it was opened up to everything.
Yeah.
Other than VW. And then all of a sudden you've got these seriously smart BMWs there, Hondas there, all decked, like beautiful stance. This is way past the days of body kits and whatnot. This is when like the Euro scene was just, to me, at its absolute peak. And it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. And that was the year I actually went when I worked for Fast Car. So I'd gone as kind of staff and walking around. And it was great, Jay, to be honest, because we were just like, look around and just get like a year's worth of content, basically. like we'll feature that car next month, that one, the one after, and it went like that. But it was such a good vibe. Everyone was approachable, and quality day. And this was before you obviously went down to Goodwood. So kudos.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. We hit it at the right time. Everyone had started Euro in their car. Yeah. Essentially, the body kit era was pretty much dead. So everyone was like, actually, why don't we do what the VW boys are doing and take body kits off and stretch a bit of tyre and lower it? And it was that. That was kind of our thing. So didn't matter if you had an RX-7 or if you had a Civic, as long as it kind of felt like that kind of vibe, you were in. And we purposely tried to not, although we made you apply, we still let in some normal cars, but they were different. And they were cars, Car was one of the founding members of Edition 38 back in 2001. And we went completely against that show, not because we hated it, because we loved it. We spent years building cars for that show. But because we were 2 weeks after that show. So we were like, right, if you've been to Edition 38 and you're going to come to a show 2 weeks later, it's got to be totally different. Yeah. And it was like, right, let's make it the complete anti sort of establishment show and bring everyone in. And we had music playing all day. And yes, the fact that it was on concrete was the main thing we wanted. We didn't want to be on grass because at the time everyone was on grass, and we wanted to sort of change it a little bit. So yeah, we were lucky.
I'll tell you what as well, again, because this was obviously way before Instagram and whatnot, but just like the fact that the cars were like parked on concrete. I mean, that was if you're unlucky, you know what I mean? If you lucked out, you were indoors in a hangar and stuff. I mean, just like the most incredible kind of photogenic location that you could want to just take your car. And you're right as well. It was always September, so it was always like the last one where you're like, right, okay. And everyone would make the effort to bring their cars out before some of them were put away for winter and whatnot, like the proper show cars and that. But yeah, you're right. There was music pumping all day. People were handing out Rockstar energy drinks right, left and centre and all that. And it was a good, really, really, really good day. Like I say, like tops for putting that together, it has to be said.
I appreciate it.
What would you, was there much of a Porsche crowd back then? Or was, I know you'd see the odd one now and again, but yeah, can you remember, was there any sort of standout cars back then, or were they not really there?
No, I mean, it's funny, a lot of the VW boys, myself included, that was always our sort of go-to dream car, right? We want to get a 911. But back then, not sort of when we first started, I think 2008, it started to kick off. 964s were still cheap. Richie, who I spoke about earlier, bought his one, I think in 08, which was red back then. And I'll never forget, he said to me, he rang me up and he went, "This dude's got a black one here." He said, "It's got a few oil leaks, but he only wants $8,000 for it." And my exact response was, "Oh, mate, I do not need a Porsche in my life. What am I going to do? Spend 20 grand on it and then just sell it for nothing?" Nah, it's all right. Don't worry about it. Possibly, aside from swapping a Mark II Escort RS2000 for a set of decks when I was about 18, that is possibly the worst car decision I've ever made. And when I went to buy my 964 2 years ago, I was on the phone to Richie then, and he went, "Do you remember that time?" And I was like, yeah, shut up.
Yeah, don't need that conversation.
That's quality. We have said before, though, haven't we, like on this podcast, that it's almost like natural ascension, really. A lot of people start out with VWs. We all did to say, to a greater or lesser degree, and then just sort of like slowly migrated off into the world of Porsche and whatnot. But if Porsches weren't represented in cars, they were definitely represented in wheels, because you couldn't move at these sort of shows for design 90s tucked under the arches of a Mark II or whatever, so.
God, they were everywhere. I mean, only today we were talking about it, and we were talking about, I got a new set of wheels for the 964 today, Kinesis wheels. And one of the guys who works here, one of the sales guys, was like, "I remember them." And I was like, yeah. Basically, they were like, they made the Super Cup and they were a real big Porsche brand. I said, "But you will remember them on Mark III and Mark IV Golfs, because everybody wanted them. And wanted to, and then put them. And we were talking about how everybody did that and put Porsche stuff on. I mean, I remember having an RS2 badge on the inside of my Mark II Golf. I mean, what was that all about?
Looked bloody good though, didn't it? That was it, wasn't it? A set of design 90s, some wing mirrors off a 911 as well. Chuck those on, proper. Talking about, you were saying that you couldn't define what makes a player's car. Do you think you can? Is there?
No, honestly, no. Because
it's just getting the look right.
Yeah, but it isn't even a look, because we go from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, I was very much like, you look at what the cars that me and Carl built when we were building the brand, which is kind of from 06 to kind of 12, when we were really pushing. And
run us through some of those.
So I built that Mark II. Then I then built a Mark IV when they were still a new car.
Yeah,
with a TT dash, big turbo car, TT dash RS4 seats. There's another one. It had a brand new Porsche turbo steering wheel on it. I mean, it's about the most random collection of parts you could get. And then I went back to my first love, which was Mark I Golfs. And I was very Germanic in the way that I wanted my cars built. They had to be spotlessly clean, completely smooth bay, completely wire tucked, as little stuff going on as possible. And Carl, at that time, was building B5 RS4s in orange. I think he'd done one in Viper Green. He'd done one in orange. I can't remember. It's the Porsche orange, but I can't remember what it's called. And he'd done Audi S4s.
Silver Corrado.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah, Silver Corrado. Obviously, he made his name building a Mark III golf cart that was, the number plate was P2 Yob, which was like Standox, flip paint, smooth bay, VR6, smoothed everything. It won prizes all across Europe. And they were and then at that point we were just building cars to get the brand noticed. And I was going down one route and he was going down this whole kind of flamboyant route.
Yeah.
And I mean, we built some cool stuff back then, and I kind of miss those days when cars were like that when they were fully built. And that's what I miss about the VW scene, is that, you know, we would go to Germany and you would see, I used to have this thing, I was obsessed with Mark 1 Golfs that had fully chromed engines, and then they'd have nothing inside apart from a cage, a dash, and one seat. That was it. It was like ridiculous. It was the most pointless car on earth, but I used to love them. And I ended up building one. I built one with it was a G60 white with a fully blacked out engine, and it had one seat in it. It was the most ridiculous, pointless car ever. Not the most pointless car. I've built plenty, but that was a pretty stupid car.
That is quality.
Wasn't your Polo all smoothed out in the engine bay, Lee?
Not really. No, I didn't have the skills for that. No, I styled it on like a Harlequin Polo, so all the different bits of the engine componentry. Some were bits red, some were yellow, and whatnot. Yeah, the wire tuck stuff that some of the cars had was just next level, you know. And that was a thing. Well, a lot of people spent some serious cash on these cars. You know, it got to the stage of kind of keeping up with the Joneses, and there was big money flying around, weren't there? You know, and, there got a point, and I'm not going to lie, I sort of jumped in it. It was very much like you were just trying to outdo the next person.
Yeah,
and you know, I'd always wanted to go to certain shows and win best of class. So it was like, you want to go to Men in VW out in Holland, and you want to win best of show out there, and so you were going up against the best in Europe, and there was some crazy cars, and a lot of money was spent by a lot of people trying to outdo each other in a nice way. It wasn't a kind of like sort of kind of mug you off kind of way. It was a nice kind of like everyone was pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
And I kind of missed that side of it.
I have those days of those show cars are gone a bit, don't you think? Like this, I know cars are less accessible, or people are less interested, or just the costs involved now in modifying stuff have gone through the roof. But it just it's a real, like you say, it's a real shame. There's not much you can buy and play with, is there?
I think the biggest difference is the way the car world is. People don't, back then you bought a car and you owned it. So you would buy a Mark II Golf and that would be your car. Yeah. So you would then gradually start this sort of Ferris wheel of a nightmare where I'll do a little bit of modification. And then 2 years down the road, you've made the car completely impractical because you've built a full show car. Whereas nowadays, no one's buying old cars. They're all leasing cars for 2 years, putting air and wheels and, wrapping it, which I hold my hands up, I've done many times. And that nowadays is a build, whereas to someone of my age, it's not. Like back then it was, if you smooth the bait, no, well, it's not a build then. Have you done this? No. It's a different world. So, and I don't think that in certain areas that will come back. Or is still around. I know a couple of guys who are building 964s at the moment that are going to really push the boundaries. It would be nice to see more of that.
I'd love to see some more sort of homebrewed stuff, I think, sort of where it's, genuine originality, rather than it just being another singer rip-off or whatever. People are actually, like you said, coming up with their own stuff and like you said, pushing those boundaries again, because it's just, I miss it. I mean, I was in that Volkswagen world, probably the slightly older stuff, but proper custom, proper show cars that just, they're so few and far between. I wouldn't even know where to go these days to see them, to be honest. I mean, it's, a lot of the shows are dead, aren't they? It's a difficult one.
Yeah, a lot of sort of the older VW shows are kind of past their prime now. Like at Classic, we try to pick the sort of, where I sort of place the cars, I try to pick the more sort of built cars. And we do get a lot of flack from guys that have spent, 20 grand on certain elements of their car, but it hasn't been picked, and they can't understand why their RS4 is outside, yet the kid with a Hillman Imp is inside.
Yeah.
And that is, it's just purely down to our taste in vehicles and the way we kind of look at them.
I went to Classic, I think it's 2019, so not last year, the year before. And that was the first players thing I'd been to, actually. I'd always kind of missed them. I'd either away on holiday or something like that. And the mix of cars I thought was just epic. And you had a few Porsches, a few 964s around, which obviously took my interest at the time. But then you'd have like a 1934 Ford rumbling with a flat head, and there was just everything and anything was there. It was epic. I really enjoyed it.
I mean, that show, we've been lucky with that. We were lucky when we got that venue, and that venue attracts everyone.
Yeah.
And by this point, me and Carl are obviously a lot older, and our tastes have changed, and we handpick every car that gets into classic.
Yeah.
And the grass area, kind of the main little grass area, is handpicked on each day by me. I stand at the corner and I'm, being that arsehole that's going, your car can go there, but your car can go there.
Yeah.
And I do it for that reason, that I want you to walk past the 964, then next to a 34, that's then next to a C10, that's then next to a Hillman Imp, because I don't, and it is about just sort of changing it up, really.
Yeah.
And my car head is so all over the place that's how I want it to be reflected. And Carl's exactly the same. Like he thinks of the most retarded things, and you're like, yeah, that works. And that's how we pick the cars, essentially.
Yeah. I found it great because, I've always been into VWs in the past. I've been to lots of VW shows. Then obviously I've been Porsche stuff for the last couple of years or so. And that's very Porsche centric. And you go because you love that brand, but it's great to go to a show that's got so much more, and there's so much more interest there. So I'd really sort of implore sort of any of our listeners that are very Porsche centric to head out to that sort of show that's got a bit of everything in it, because it really opens your eyes to not only what's out there, but different things that you might want to do to your car as well.
Yeah, again, it comes back to that word modified, and it puts people off. When I had to sell the Dream to the guys at Goodwood,
and
I hated saying it down the phone. It's a modified car show, but it's not really, it's not a ultimate street car kind of thing.
Yeah,
and it took the guy 3 weeks to ring me back, and that we get a lot of it. Yes, and everything is. Pretty much every car there is modified, but some of it, like a lot of the Porsches that we get, they're not over the top.
No.
And we get quite a few of them now, because a lot of the guys that I grew up with in the VW scene have moved on to them, and they're like, well, they still want to come, they still want to do it. So yeah, I mean, we get quite a few there nowadays.
Yeah, that's good. I believe you've got a big history with Rotorform, haven't you? Sort of coming off subject.
Yeah. You've known
Brian for a long time?
Yeah. I've known Brian now since 2010.
Is he? Would I be right in saying he's the founder of Rotorform?
Brian and Jason are the founders of Rotorform, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we, purely by chance, really, they approached Elliot at PVW, and they wanted to put a set of their wheels. They were massively into VWs. That was their whole thing, was European cars. Rotorform was based around that. The first wheel was a 5x112. And they approached Elliot, and Elliot was like, well, these guys over here they build some crazy cars. And at the time we were doing a lot of stuff with Darren down at G-Works, who was building this crazy He was building a crazy Mark IV. It was Beluga Ice, which was like a white. It was on airlift, and it was decided that Brian sent over a set of wheels to Elliot, who then sent them over to Carl, and we put them on Darren's car, and it just blew up. And that was Ultimate Dubs, I think. Don't quote me on this or fact check me on it, but I think that was 2010.
Yeah.
I think. And then I met Brian for the first time at Edition about a year later when he came over. And by that point, Rotorform had started to gain some notoriety. And at that, it was getting bigger and bigger. And yeah, I've been involved with them pretty much ever since. I mean, I've been friends with Brian and Jason ever since. And we kind of Carl more than myself was instrumental in bringing the brand as a whole over here, as to distribute it. And then, come full circle, I've ended up working for Wheel Pros who own Rotorform. It's kind of strange how it's all kind of worked out.
Yeah, I brought it up because I believe it was a trip to Worthesay a couple of years ago with Brian, and you were sort of taking on a bit of a tour of the Porsche factory with Brian. And I was thinking, is that how you got into Porsche? Is that what finally made you? Because you've had all sorts of stuff before, haven't you?
Yes. So I've always wanted one, but even like when Richie asked me about that, I think no one could see that they were going to go up as much as they had, as they have. So when he offered me one at $8,000, I thought, that's all right. If I really want one, I'll get one in a few years' time.
Yeah.
But then spiraled out of control. And it was about probably, I can't remember, 3 years ago. Last year's kind of like messed my whole brain up with what year it is. But yeah, me and Brian and Jason were in Worthesay. And Brian, at that point, was just started working with Jean-Pierre at JP Performance.
Okay, yeah.
And he was like, why don't you come back and I'll get you a tour of the Porsche factory. And Benny, who run the factory tours back then, came and met us, and we got the whole thing. We got the full tour of
you got the full backdoor tour, isn't it?
Yeah. Benny took us around the whole sort of secret museum, and at that point, you're sort of just going, wow. Even Brian, so at that point, Brian has had his 964 for many years. Jason's got his 993. JP's got many, and he's a complete Porsche file. And we're sort of walking around, and you're sort of going, this is ridiculous. It's just race car after 959 prototype. And we ended up having dinner in the restaurant above the museum. And it was me, Benny, JP, Brian and Jason. And I was talking about Luftercult.
Yeah.
And how I thought that show was amazing. I've never been, but what I'd seen, the other guys had been, and I said, I'd love to be able to replicate that in the UK. I said, but it's hard to kind of break that world when you don't have a Porsche. And they just all started hounding me. Why have you not bought one? Why have you not bought one? And I kind of then spent the next sort of 2 weeks just like constantly trawling the classifieds and eBay. And I knew what I wanted, which was a 964 black. In the end, I just sort of decided, I think at that point, I still had my 240Z.
Yeah.
And a guy from the States offered me maybe an offer I couldn't kind of refuse. And it was just perfect timing. And I was like, right, well, go on then. I'll let that go. And it sort of helped me sort of find the 964 that I wanted. And yeah, I was very lucky in getting the one that I wanted. Yeah. Well, it depends on how you look at it, really. But that's kind of it. Started literally from that dinner with those guys hounding me and Jean-Pierre saying, why have you not bought one? Come on, you need to buy one. You've got to experience it. And I was like, yeah, I know, but they're not exactly cheap now. Not for the one I want, anyway.
They're not 8K anymore.
No. So yeah,
what did you end up buying, and what did that car look like, and what does it look like now, and what's the plan for it? Give us a rundown.
So I found I'd kind of given up on 964s. I kind of had a ceiling as to what I was prepared to spend. And I'm not going to find one, or I'm going to find one that needs too much work, or it's not the right colour. And I'm not averse to left-hand drive cars at all. My 240Z's left-hand. I own about 3 left-hand drive cars. And then randomly on a Thursday evening, I just stumbled across, it was on mobile.d, and it was a black left-hand drive C2, 150,000 kilometres, owned by a guy down in St Ives. And I thought it was black on black, which is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I rung the guy, and he said, I've actually just sold it to the German guy who lives in Japan, and we're just trying to figure out how to get it to him. He's like, how keen were you? I was like, well, I'm keen enough to come down tomorrow with cash. And he's like, oh, all right then, we'll come down then. So I rung James, a good friend of mine, who's he's a salesman here, but he's a fanatical detailer. So I thought, right, let's take him down so he can run his eye over the paint. I was on the phone to Richie checking out what do I need to look for mechanically. I went down there. We went down there the night before. We literally left an hour after that phone call. Drove down halfway, stopped at, I think it was Exeter or somewhere like that, in the worst hotel I've ever stayed in. Not that really matters. And then we got up, went there in the morning, and it turns out this guy was a collector. He opened his triple garage, and I'd never seen one at that point, but it was an original Viper Green metallic 930 turbo. Mine was in the middle, and then the other side was a maritime blue RS lightweight. And it turns out this guy had like 36 Porsches, and the only reason he was selling this is he was in the middle of building two 911Es. He said, no, to be honest, I don't use the car. I'd already MOT checked it, and it had done 5,000 kilometers in the last 5 years, and he just never ever used it. But it had just been well looked after. It hadn't had a rebuild or anything like that. It didn't need it. It was just very well looked after. It had been set up by Devon Motorsport. It was on KWV3s. He'd done the kind of right bits to it. It had an RS clutch and flywheel, and it was just nice. And he hadn't even advertised it in the UK. He'd only advertised it on mobile.d because it was left-hand drive.
Yeah.
And like I said, it didn't bother me. So he took me out for driving it. I'm sold. Like, just in the end, I think it's the only car I've ever paid what he was asking me for. I was just like, yeah, no problem. And then drove back and got all the way to Reading no, I didn't actually. That's a complete lie. I got 50 miles from his house and the alternator belt snapped. And I remember ringing Richie, and he's like, well, it depends how good the battery is. It might get you a reasonable way. And I looked at James, who was in my truck that we drove down there, and we were like, sod it, let's just keep going. Let's just get as far as we can go. I've got AA cover. They'll come and pick me up. It's not a problem. We got all the way back to Reading, and it was on the M4. It just died, and we pulled over. I rang the AA, and they were like, yeah, no problem. We'll be out to you within about 30 minutes. Brought me back 10 minutes later to say, oh, the car hasn't got an MOT. I was like, what?
Shit.
It's not got an MOT. And it turned out that I'd got so excited. It came with a folder that thick, and I hadn't even checked to see if it had an MOT. And neither had Paul, the guy I bought it from. So I've rung him, and it's like, Paul, you sold me his car, hasn't got an MOT, and now the alternator belt snapped, and I'm stuck on the M4, and they want £370 to come and recover it. Lovely gentleman, transferred me £370. Me and James then spent the next 6 hours waiting for the AA to come and pick us up and to get the car back to the workshop. So yeah, it was and I'll never forget, because I run my wife, and I was like, I'm not going to car. I'm going to be, God knows what time I'll be home because the car's broke down. Well, that was really worth it, wasn't it? But you'll be well at it.
Supportive wife there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's kind of that. It was kind of exactly what I wanted, but it was a difficult start to the relationship. And it was just purely because he'd not driven it. And nothing, all the belts were tight, and everything was just so sort of like tight that it needed some miles on it. And I think I got through 3 alternator belts in the first 6 months. And then I finally got it to Richie, and it was a little bit out of line, and it got it all set up, and he serviced it, and it was great. And then since then, I've just turned it into an absolute nightmare, basically.
So give us the rundown then. What's it look like now?
It still generally looks pretty much No, it doesn't actually. So it didn't really need any paint because the one thing when the guy pulled it out, James, and he went in to make us a cup of tea, and James turned around to me and went, "If you don't buy this, I'm going to ring my dad, get him to lend me the money so I can buy it because that is mint." And James is horrific at pulling cars apart for paintwork. So I knew it was good paint-wise, but I still managed to end up painting most of it. So, yeah, I had the whole front bumper smooth, got rid of the washer jets, got rid of the number plate recess. What else have I done? Body-wise, I'm just trying to think. I've got more to do now because it's now got a centre exit GT3 style exhaust. So it's got to have one side of it made good and the little sort of aperture has got to be done. There was a tiny bit of bubbling on the rear window.
Yeah.
So I had the whole roof from the scuttle all the way back painted. And yeah, I had the rear bumper painted and now needs redoing again. So yeah, it came to me with no stone chips. And within the first 3 months, I put so many miles on it. I took it to the ring and I just covered the front in stone chips. And it, when you open the garage and you look at it, it was just too annoying. So I ended up having it painted. And then it went into the interior. I gutted the interior. That again was just my stupidity, really. Thinking that it's like a Mark 1 Golf, I thought, do you know what I'm going to do? I'll take the rear seats out. So I took the rear seats out and I thought, I'm going to get it back to bare metal in the rear. Oh, dear. That was the worst thing I ever did because as anyone who knows who's tried to do it, what Porsche fit that rear carpet and sound deadening with is incredible. It's the hardest thing to get off. So I got halfway through that and I was like, that's done. Right now I'm going to have to get someone to trim the whole lot. And I've worked with a trimmer for the last few years who've done my 240Z and some other stuff for me. And he worked down at DS Trim Shack, who do a lot of Porsche stuff.
Yeah.
And we took it there and we put Cobra seats, who I've worked with for years, just black leather seats. It was ended up Alcantara roof, complete Alcantara roofline and Alcantara RS door cards, complete Alcantara dash, all black. I didn't want to go too Larry. I went yellow stitch all the way through it. And at that point, I had a high-go cage. And Junior, who was one of the guys who worked at DS Trim Shack, used to be one of the trimmers on Pimp My Ride, believe it or not. And he's related to Jamie from Charisma, who was the guy behind a lot of Pimp My Ride cars. And he happened to have some yellow Alcantara still left from a car from years ago. And he was like, do you fancy doing the cage in like yellow Alcantara? And I was like, it was all at that point I'd painted it yellow. And I was like, yeah, why not? It was a totally stupid idea. And we did. So now it's got the high-go cages, all yellow Alcantara. Got it back from there. And it was great. Absolutely didn't need to do anything to it whatsoever. It was driving lovely. I've got a set of 959s, which you obviously now own.
Yeah.
Driving brilliantly. Loved it. Bought some RSs, BBS RSs for it. And then the start of this year, decided that I wanted to put it on throttle bodies, do all of that. And I'm pretty much almost there. It's mapped. I'm just waiting on, unbelievably, a sunroof clip to come from Porsche so that we can put the sunroof back in, then test it on the road, and then it should come back to me.
At last.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, I've worked with the guys down at Regal doing it. ATP throttle bodies.
They're down in Southampton, aren't they, Regal?
Yeah. I'm good friends with Ryan, the owner's son, and Chris is a great guy who runs it down there. And to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't have given the car to anyone else, apart from say Richie, my friend. But with with Chris, I knew the car was in safe hands. I knew that it would be done right, that he wouldn't do things that didn't need doing just because I'm going to overcharge you, but he would do things correctly, and he wanted to do it. That was the other thing. He was like, I really want to do this. And it's of all the cars I've done, it's that side of it's been pleasurable, watching it get done, because I had no intention of getting involved with it myself. I wanted it done properly.
Yeah.
And yeah, Michael Longman supplied the ECU, came down and mapped it. It's now got the a wave track diff in it. It's just it had all Fab Speed headers put on it, and then we had it went up to Alunox to have a full Inconel and titanium system made, which I had coming out as a GT3 style from the centre. And yeah, it's almost there.
What does it sound like?
I haven't heard it in the flesh.
Yeah.
But Chris used to race in the Carrera Cup, and he said it idles like a cup car, and then it's actually like when you're sort of at motorway speeds, it's nice, but the moment you sort of take it above 4,500 revs, it wails like a GT3. So, which is exactly what I wanted. I want to be able to use the car. I want to be able to go to Worthersea and places like that. And so I don't want it obnoxious, but I want to know
scream when you want it to scream.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just can't wait to get it back. Like I say, the wheels arrived for it today, and yeah, looking forward to it. Not that I can really go anywhere in it, and I certainly won't be driving it on these roads anyway. So,
You found some picture of your interior. That looks pretty cool with the tartan down the middle as well. Those seats already suit it, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, look, and the good thing about them is you can change them. I've got sort of yellow tartan at them, but I can change it back to black when I feel like it needs to calm down.
Centers, yeah.
And at the moment,
what's the seat choice on those? Which model are they? Do you know?
That is the Cobra Imola.
Yeah, really suit it.
Yeah, and it's I'm a big boy, and you're obviously slightly offset, and it was all about getting it low enough to be in a decent position. Because when I drove it back from Devon, St Ives, sorry, it had the original seats, and it was by the time we broke down, I was actually pleased it broke down because I was in so much pain. So I'm kind of like bent up like this. I was like, yeah, this is not really what I was thinking about. So that was literally the first modification I did. I rung up Mark, who owns Cobra, and I was like, oh, can you please get me some seats for this car? And they actually came and fitted it. I bought the car 2 or 3 weeks before Classic, and they fitted the seats on the show field at Classic on Friday night. Whilst we were setting up, they fitted the 2 seats in there, and they made the frame so it could sit really low.
What have you done with the shifter in there? Because it's not running the normal sort of shifter boot, is it? Is that
yes,
sort of do away with it?
Yeah, so we've put a CAE shifter in it. So I had one of those in my Mark 1. They're a German company that make these ridiculous kind of short shifts. And yeah, I'd had it might have been a Redline short shift in it already, which was quite nice. But having had one of these in the Mark 1, I thought, well, if I'm going to do this interior, I might as well do this as well. And yeah, I mean, it's like sort of the bolt action on a shotgun, on a rifle, sorry. Like it is literally just as simple as going like that to change gear. I mean, everybody looks at it and goes, oh, you've got sequential gearbox. You're like, no, you haven't. But yeah, it's a real trick bit of kit.
Nice.
Just I want to segue slightly to Worthersea, because we've mentioned it on this pod once or twice in the past, but obviously you sound like you're a serial attendee. So like, what is so awesome about it?
Last year was the first year I've missed since 2005. I've been every year. And it was originally a VW Treffen, so a Club GTI meet at Maria Worth. And back when I first went, it was just purely VWs.
Yeah,
that was all it was, and it was still quite small. Then in like sort of 06, 07, VW got behind it, started building these huge stands, and it is literally back then it was VW Nirvana. Like you've got this huge lake in what is quite a wealthy part of Austria, and it's beautiful. And basically, everybody started to go there, and we used to fly. I mean, the first year I went, I did actually drive, but then I got one of my mates to drive home, and I flew home because I was like so over driving. And yeah, everyone is kind of like, and it's weird because you're never there on the show, if that makes sense. The actual show is for 3 days.
Yeah.
But the show is essentially a lot of drunk guys shouting, "Gummy, gummy, gummy." And if you've got a nice car, they just generally lean all over it. So it's turned into like almost like a pre-show that happens like a week or two before the actual show. And people just turn up from all over Europe. Now it's pretty much open to everything. It's still very kind of Germanic. It's very Porsche heavy, a lot of Mercedes, a lot of BMWs. You get the odd Skyline, but it's very kind of that world. Generally moving more supercarish now.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know how they get away with it because they literally, you take over the whole, like 3 towns around this lake, and it's incredible. And part of it is the drive there now. I mean, I'm too old to do it now, but we used to do it in one hit. I've done it in one, it's like 1,100 miles. I've done it in a Mark II Golf, a Mark I Golf. And it's like ridiculous. And we'd do it through the night. I trailered a Mark I Golf there once. But now if we do it, we generally like the Stuttgart, we stop at Stuttgart and then we do it the following day and then same coming back. And we try to sort of like, if we can stop at a museum, we always stop at Gmund pretty much every year because I love that place.
Yeah.
It's even now it's going a bit too supercar-y for my personal taste.
I heard a bit Audi R8.
Yeah. Oh, literally Audi R8s and BMW M2s are like, you know, they're everywhere. And it's, you know, the whole pop bang culture is more, but you still find these pockets and like there's very much like a kind of like a little secret scene of like if you're still into your VWs or if you're into like they have 964 meets in little car parks and you go there and there's the most incredible German and Belgium and Dutch 964s that you never see, and they're all amazing. And you know, so that does still happen, but of a night now everybody sits outside the casino bar, and which is now expanded, and it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. I still enjoy it, but it is chaos there. But it's still got its nice little bits to it as well.
It just sounds like a mecca for modified cars, and we used to cover it in the magazine and whatnot years ago. And would love to go, but where you're saying it's kind of getting really supercar-y, it does kind of put me off a little bit because those sorts of shows are just 10 a penny and they just don't interest me at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it's like I say, it's not really a show. You sort of go there and you spend like 6 days there, and you literally, if you've taken your car, you know, we will get up in the morning, we'll go down, we stay in this stupid hotel, and we'll have a breakfast, and then we'll, you know, you'll drive your car and you'll go to the Shell station, which is like this hangout, and it's really stupid. Again, referencing my wife, she's like, so let me get this right. You drive 1,000 miles to hang around at a petrol station. How old are you? Like, really? And I did actually take my wife. I took my wife once in the Mark I, which was completely stripped out. Had no interior apart from 2 seats and a cage.
I think you're going to say it just had the one seat. She was sat on a pillow.
Yeah. And I took her that year. She flew with 3 other girls and then got the train down to the hotel, and I then drove her home, and she literally sat in this car with ear defenders on. It had no heater, ear defenders, wrapped up in a blanket, and she's like, I'm never going there again.
Are you still married?
Yes, somehow I am.
How does she put up with you?
I have no idea, is the honest answer. No idea. But yeah, overseas, I'll keep going because the good still outweighs the bad. And for me, I've got a lot of European friends, and it's a nice place to kind of just hook up. And yeah, you see stuff there that you won't see anywhere else.
Yeah. Sounds like a thing to do. I've always wanted to do it. I always used to pore over the pictures in all the magazines of Worthersea, because there's, you know, the stuff that you'd see in the report on the show that you're just like, oh, look at that, it's just out of this world.
Yeah, I think it was the first place where I saw like big RS6s on air.
Yeah,
with like huge power, like 6 or 7 years ago, and you just, you know, it is still a very cool place, and because it's such a lovely place as well. It's such a nice place to be that you put up. You can stay away from the supercar because that's more of a nighttime thing. You can forget that, and during the day, it's amazing. You would just be sitting outside a restaurant, and there's just amazing cars going past all day long. It is, awesome. You know, it's a cool place to be.
Yeah, wicked. That's my kind of day out. That has to be said.
Yeah.
Would you put that top of your list in terms of favourite, European shows, or is there something else that takes your fancy over that at the moment?
Yeah.
What do you reckon the number one visit is?
Yeah, for me, probably still Worthersea. Because of it, like I say, because of everything that goes into it, the driving there, the driving home, and the stuff you see. Yeah, for me, that's the one place in Europe that I always want to go every year. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel safe taking your car there?
Well, I used to. The problem is the police have got really heavily into penalising you, because it's a money maker for the towns, because they get like tens of thousands of people there, but the police are they're just so militant. You know, they will make you raise your car. If you're on air, they'll impound your car. And the last year I took my Mark 1, you know, I got pulled over because it was a left-hand drive Mark 1 on a US Californian plate. And it had a roll cage, which is illegal in Australia. Austria. I don't know if it's legal in Australia as well, but and the guys pulled me over, and you have to carry your papers with you.
Yeah,
I didn't. And my wife's sitting next to me. We got pulled, so we've then been literally almost frog marched back to our hotel, and we've stayed at this very nice hotel for about the last 8 years. And the concierge, and I didn't know this until after the fact, but the police they actually said to me on the side of the road, your car, you not see again. And I know people who have had, you know, their cars impounded, and it's like 12 grand to get it out. And some people are just like, well, I've got 12 grand and I'm, you know, it is what it is. And I literally went up to get my papers, and I came down, and the guy was like, no, we don't need to see your papers. I was like, what? He's like, no, it's fine. And they got in their car, got in the police car and drove off. And it turns out the concierge had said to the guy, this guy comes here every year. He's with his family. You don't need to aggravate him. He's a nice guy. And that was it. And that's kind of sums them up, really. They like to pick on the British. We're easy to be picked on because we generally don't follow any of their rules. And, you know, we're always, like I say, we're always pushing the boundaries. And that's the only side of it I don't like. But again, you know, I take my 911 out there, no problem, because it's not in your face. It's not obnoxious. I probably would never take my Mark 1 back out there again. So no.
Okay. Right. We'll get the feel of that.
Yeah.
Go out there in a legal-ish looking car.
It's good to see where you get all your influences and inspiration from, just by the cars and the shows and the people that you've been around and associated yourself with for the past 10, 15 years. So where is Players going to go from here, Jay, and the brand and the show?
Well, the thing I've always done is I've always had a day job. Players to me has always been, along with Car, we've never, much to some people's disbelief, we never made it our sole business. We always wanted it to stay fun. Yeah. And I have this belief that the moment it becomes a business, it stops being fun. And we're both quite old. Carl now lives in LA. And and our sort of take on the whole car scene has changed a lot. So the North Weald show probably won't ever happen again. I'd always planned on getting to 15 years with that, which would have been this year. Last year. Would have been last year, but obviously it was cancelled. And I went down to see them at the end of last year, and they've sold most of the land. Oh, really? So I simply couldn't put the show on. It doesn't look like it. By this point, Classic has kind of become our baby. That's our event. I mean, we put a lot of time and a lot of effort into that. And it's a slightly different scene to what we do at North Weald. So we're kind of focusing mainly on that. And like I say, Flat Six was, again, part of the brand. We brought on a guy to run the brand because I've got a full-time job, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, it's still very much focused around Classic. We're not, although we do some merchandise and stuff like that, we're not very kind of shouty about it. We are generally conceived as a sort of lifestyle brand, but we sort of try to sort of just not fly under the radar, but just go along and do our thing. And, you know, with Classic, just really focus on that. I mean, we're lucky to have that relationship with Goodwood. And, you know, as a venue, we're never going to get anything better than that. So long may it continue working with those guys and being down there.
But you're doing something out in the US as well? Yeah,
we do. So obviously, as I say, Carl lives in LA now. So we do a show called Player Select, which is fantastic. I'm not a supercar guy at all. Unless they're like 70s or 80s or earlier, I'm not really interested. But because we're always at SEMA for work, because we've always been, you know, both myself and Carl worked at Airlift for many years. Obviously, cars get built for SEMA, and a lot of them are West Coast cars. Yeah. And like I say, Carl's lived out there for 5 or 6 years now. And we just decided to put on an event, like a completely free event. We teamed up with a good friend of ours, Ravi, who owns CSF radiators. Mm-hmm. And we hold an event at his warehouse and distribution. And we have the kind of loading docks. And it's the first opportunity for the public to come and see the SEMA builds, or the big SEMA builds. Yeah. So we get a lot of the real high-end, you know, crazy twin turbo Hurricanes, Mitch, who does the button built cars, brings out his stuff to our shows. And we get this kind of sort of 100 cars that are pretty much all from SEMA or the West Coast. And it's really a sort of eclectic mix. And it's just nice for people to just come out and see. And it goes down really well every year. So, yeah, I really enjoy that. And that's a great excuse to go away for a week.
Like it. Yeah, I need an invite.
Yeah, you don't need an invite. You just turn up. That's fine.
Just turn up.
Yeah.
Nice. Sounds like a plan, doesn't it? I've got just change subject slightly. I've got a little bit of a personal question. So I've not long ago acquired my 964 and was on a little bit of a hunt for possibly a BBS type purchase.
Certainly for 911s and certainly 964s, you know, if I didn't work for Wheel Pros, BBS, I had RSs last year. And E88s for me on that car are perfect. And that's why I was so pleased that I didn't know at the time when I started for Wheel Pros that we owned Kinesis. And the moment I found out, I was like, oh, right, I've got to have a set of Kinesis wheels built, because they're, you know, like I say, they build the Super Cup and stuff like that. And I love that brand. And we're kind of bringing it back. It's been in the doldrums for many years, and we're building a few special sets, and it's going to be a Porsche only brand. Forged only. So yeah, that's something that's really exciting that we're doing now. Yeah.
Nice.
Sounds good.
What other well-known brands are in the Wheel Pros portfolio?
So you've got, I'm trying to think of what well-known ones are over here. Obviously you've got Rotorform. They own I can't name all of them because there's about 23. But
Is there really? Wow.
Rotorform, Fuel, Off-Road, KMC, XD, Asante, Niche, Kinesis. I'm trying to think of some of the others. Foose, Dub, who make the crazy sort of 30-inch spinners and stuff like that. We've recently just bought TSW.
Oh, wow. Old school.
Yeah. So we've recently bought TSW, which is also owns Black Rhino, which is a big truck brand. I mean, it's heavily US based, obviously. But it's, over here, Rotorform is a massive brand.
Yeah.
And that's why we decided to sort of set up a European base around that and sort of grow the other brands sort of over here and in Europe. And I mean, to be fair, they've always been, the truck stuff's always been quite popular in Europe. I was surprised at how popular it was. But yeah, I mean, there's so many brands, it's ridiculous. And you've got such a wealth of choice. It's great because you get to work on different things every day.
Yeah,
it's probably time for our 10 questions, isn't it?
I think it is. Yeah, the infamous. You must have heard the 10 questions before.
I have, but yes,
hopefully you haven't prepped too much.
I haven't prepped at all. I don't prep for anything. So yeah. Let's go for it.
Right, you leading, Joe?
I can do. Yeah,
go for it. Go on.
Right, Jay. So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Right, air or water?
Air.
Favorite Porsche model?
964.
Favorite Porsche color?
Ruby Stone.
Yeah, same as me. Who is your ultimate Porsche icon?
Richard Atwood.
Ole.
Yeah. Favorite track?
Oh. For me, because I've done a lot of stuff there, Brands Hatch.
That's cool. To Fuke or not to Fuke, into obviously relating to the wheels?
Not.
Stock or hot rod?
I'm going to have to say hot rod. I love stock, but yeah, hot rod.
There was one answer. Narrow or wide body?
Narrow.
All right. Cars and coffee or a track day?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I'm going to go with cars and coffee.
I love it. And last but not least, back seats in a 911, yes or no?
No, utterly pointless. Unless you've got a very small child, they serve no purpose whatsoever.
You don't even go front passenger seat anyway, do you?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, quality. It's great to get an insight into what it's like to put on stellar shows for the best part of a decade and a half now. And yeah, genuinely wish you all the best for that. And also with the wheel venture as well, we'll be sure to check those out. We actually, Andy, we're yet to see yours, even a picture of it, like properly, let alone in the metal, isn't it?
Yeah, that's because it's still in the garage underneath a load of dust and bits and bobs. But yeah, we'll get it out in the next.
Sounds like Jay might have a picture of those wheels on his car that we probably.
Oh yeah, they look really good on a 964.
To be fair, I was really reluctant to sell them because there's such a timeless design on that car. And yeah, they're sort of they're custom without being over the top.
Yeah, I did feel like I was prizing a baby out of like a new mother's arms.
You were,
yeah, and that I needed to get up there and get them done before you changed your mind. So.
I'm glad they went to a good home.
Thank you, mate. Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and
no problem.
We'll catch you soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Top man and a little bit different, which is exactly what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, it sort of adds a bit of out of the ordinary from our normal talk, talking about modified cars and the modified scene. I think it was good, and I think I should really implore people to go along to some of definitely the classic show. I went a couple of years ago and loved it.
Yes. Well, we've just decided, haven't we, chatting kind of after the recording to Jay, that we're going to go along to Players Classic whenever we can next get out and do these things. And we're going to do a pod from the show, aren't we? So,
yeah, good.
Yeah, spot on. I've actually got a bit of a funny story about one of my early trips to the Players' Days back in 2008.
Let's hear it then.
2008 or 2009 this was. So we'd agreed, a good friend of mine, Guy, he came from Cumbria. I was back in Essex, and we decided we'll do Players show en route back down to the South Coast for uni to start the year. So I said, come down to Essex and up before Players. I'll pick you up from the train station. We'll go into town, have a few beers, and nothing too crazy, obviously. And then get up in the morning. We'll do Players, and then go down to Poole from there. Any case, it didn't quite go to plan, because right near the end of the night, after having an otherwise fairly kind of monotonous night, nothing too special about it, but yeah, Colchester, which is where I lived, is a squaddy town. It's a notorious squaddy town. And it turns out that some squaddy in this nightclub had an argument with his missus, absolutely fuming, clear anger problem. And it turns out that I just happened to be the unlucky sod standing next to him. So this was all caught on CCTV. You can see where this is going. After falling out with his girlfriend or partner or whatever, he's turned around and just seen me and basically said, "Oh, I'm bollocks to you and all." I wasn't even facing the guy. He's whacked me anyway in the back of the head. I was knocked out. I was in a real bad way, actually. So yeah, he got arrested, etc., etc. I had to go to A&E. So I then, from 2:00 until about 5:30 in the morning, was sitting in A&E, and then the sun had come up, and I realised I needed to be at Players show. So my mate who's come down as well, my uni mate sitting next to me, we've left hospital, got a taxi home, jumped straight in the car and went to Players. But I have to say, I didn't see a lot of cars for that show, because I spent the majority of it just sitting in the back of my own car, feeling pretty sorry for myself. Yeah, and we didn't. We were meant to go straight to Poole from there to start uni for the year. I went back home, and I think by the time I woke up, it was Wednesday. I was in a real bad way, but yeah, it was good fun.
Oh, that's good. That's commitment to the car scene, though.
Well, this is what I mean. That's how much I rated that show, because
you had to be there.
I went there with what was essentially two heads, because the size of the lump on the side of mine made up for another one. So no, it's fun.
Brilliant.
I'll say, didn't you go to a less aggressive show recently in a sort of virtual content, Lee?
Oh, very good, Joe. That's my kind of segue, that is, mate. Yeah, very good. Thank you. 10 out of 10. Yeah. So we did at the weekend, we did Fried Eggs Virtual, which was, absolutely awesome. It has to be said. Totally different experience. I've never seen or done anything like that on Instagram before, getting guests on from kind of all around the world. 996 owners from all around the world, shall I say. But I'll tell you what, it really summed up just how alive and well not only the 996 community is, but the Porsche community generally. Everyone's itching to get out, aren't they? And I even know of a 993 owner that happened to watch the 2-hour broadcast. So
who's that? Yeah, no, I was there.
Props. I loved it.
No, it's brilliant.
Your comment 5 minutes in saying, "Am I allowed to be here?"
I thought it was going to get chucked out.
It was quality, yeah. But like, genuinely, as I said on the broadcast at the time, I just thought of it in the middle of the night once. I'm sure we'd be able to do it, but never actually tried it. So genuinely logging on at 2:00 Sunday, I even said to my wife, Laura, who helped me extensively put it all together, I've no idea if this is going to work. I didn't even know if there was like a cut-off time for Instagram, like live broadcasting or anything. So it could have gone completely belly up. But no, it's thanks to like the awesome guests and the viewers watching it to make it a cool little gig. So
yeah, there's a replay, isn't there, still running around Instagram somewhere?
It is, yeah. It's on my IGTV now. It would have been lovely to put it on YouTube, but it's on Instagram. Check it out if you've not seen it, because there's a lot to learn on there, I think, and there's the same sort of thesis as to why we run this podcast. Everybody's got a story, and it was just kind of giving some game time to those people.
Yeah, it worked really well, didn't it? It was good to see people showing off their cars. It was great.
Yeah, it was wicked, wasn't it?
Might nick the format for the 993 guys. What do you think?
Do it, yeah, absolutely. Like
all three of you.
Oh, easy boy.
I tell you what, actually, on the subject of 993s, and I know we said a couple of weeks ago about next cars and whatnot, and I said a 991 C4S cab. But I have got such a huge hankering for a 993 cabriolet. I think lockdown is getting to me.
You need to go out for a long walk.
Yeah, but just like as a daily.
Have you been watching too much Nick Murray?
I haven't, to be fair. I know he's got one, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's fallen in love with it.
I think they are awesome. I really do. And as I've said before, a lot of people at Porsche use them as daily hacks. And I saw one, actually. I went out for a drive yesterday to the shops, but I accidentally took the long way. Lovely just to get the car moving around beneath you again and whatnot. But coming back into town, a 993 cab went over the Poole flyover by the train station, going the other way. I was absolutely fizzing with excitement, absolutely fizzing. And I don't know what's wrong with me. I keep going on Auto Trader and having a browse. So
there's nothing wrong with you, mate. Come on, just do it. It's fine.
I can't work out if it's a really cool thing to do or just absolutely abhorrent thing to do. I'm not sure. It's not got the roof line like the newer cars, has it? It's super
it's
boxy.
very prammy.
Yeah. But I don't know.
It is cool.
What about you guys anyway? What's new in your world? Have you had any dodgy midweek hankerings?
I don't think so. No, normally do, but been resisting, I think.
Still looking for Murano Green 964. Nobody's come and said, hello, I've got one. So, no, I don't think it's going to happen. Sticking with the 993.
I'm trying to think I keep thinking of things to do to the interior of the 964, whether it's a full retrim or just a bit of a part retrim and that sort of thing. Keep playing with ideas for that.
What's it got inside at the moment?
It's linen, so it's all leathered up and it's all linen, which is quite nice. It suits the car. So it seems doesn't really need messing with, to be honest. But it's one of those things you could easily make it your own.
Yeah. How about wheels? Are you thinking of changing the wheels?
Yeah. Yes and no. I think yes, I'd like to, but I'm just not good enough at cleaning stuff regularly. So most nice wheels are high maintenance, and what's on there is quite low maintenance.
Yeah.
So
are they Fuchs on there, Joe? I can't remember.
Yeah, they are. I think of some sort. I don't know if they're the real deal or one of the cloney copy jobbies, but they're that in that style, and they fit the car really well, and they do look the part. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just a 964 like on fully polished BBSs looks pretty cool, doesn't it?
Yeah, but you're right. The Fuchs, I think, is the perfect wheel for people that cannot be asked to clean cars, myself being one of them, because they're so easy to do. The design is so simple. It's a quick 2-minute job and it's done, isn't it? Rather than cleaning around bolts and stuff on split wheels.
I've been on split rims before. I've had BBS RMs on my Corrado.
I used to have a set of them. Wicked,
that was just like an hour a wheel.
Nightmare, absolute nightmare.
Yeah, and the rims were polished, no lacquer or anything on them. So you used to have to polish the rims every couple of weeks just to keep on top of it. It was a killer. Yeah. Don't go there.
No.
Yeah.
I do. I keep looking at Porsche, bit of a classic one. The Porsche 90s. Like I think
Design 90s.
Design 90s, sorry, yeah. And I don't know why I got a real hankering for a set of those, which again would be low maintenance, but something completely different. But I really quite fancy those.
But they look shit on a 964. They look good on any modified VW, but they look shit on a 964.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very direct opinion. I'll take it.
It's funny, isn't it? Because that was like the launch wheel with the 964. They Porsche deviated away from Fuchs, didn't they? But I mean, these days
you can't get you can't get those design 90s. I think it's from Argumented Wheels, and they do them in a size or two up. That could work. If you look at Ammo, what's that guy who does all the detailing? He's got a 964 and he's got a set on there.
Okay.
A set of oversized D90s. I have to check that out.
Yeah. They look better, but I think that's, D90s look shit on a 964 because basically they're too small for a 964.
But they're not on them anymore. That's the thing, are they? They all got lost, as we were saying with Jay. They all got lost into the VW world. A friend of mine, he had them on his. He had a set on a Seat Leon.
Yeah.
So they're on any car but a 964 now. So it might look quite refreshing, Joe, if you took it back to its original spec in that regard.
Well, I'll keep an eye open. I'm sure there's plenty of those sets knocking around.
Yeah. We've got some new Patreons to welcome to the family. And then we've got news on something a little bit different that we're doing next week.
Yes. We have. What have we got? Shall I run through them quickly?
Please do. Please do, because I always get a little kick out of you pronouncing the names. It's a source of great entertainment for me.
Here we go. So I think a few people must have been. Oh, actually, I've just seen one of the names. That's going to be interesting. Right. First up, Tom Montgomery. Thank you for upping from a beer to a coffee.
Legend.
No, from a coffee to a beer. Yeah. So he's upped his monthly. Thank you for that, mate. Appreciated. Robert Greasley. He's buying us a coffee each month. I don't know where you are, Robert, or what you've got or whatever else. So get in contact. Ross Clifford, he is a coffee and he's in the US. Derek Black, again, another coffee for us. He's got a 997S, a KN, and a Fiat 500 Abarth.
Tops, good mix.
It's like Joe. Another coffee is David King. Thank you again. I don't know anything about you, David. Let us know who you are and what you do. Right, this is the name. I apologize, Kestis. Your surname is Siluzas, I think, and you've sponsored us a beer. You're in Italy and you've got a 997.1 GTS. Very nice. Back to the US for Tyler Thompson. He has a Cayman and has sponsored us a beer. UK, Walter Crowbrock. Is that correct, Walter? I'm not sure if that's pronounced correctly. Not very good at this. He is on Instagram as known as Retro Classica. Got an interesting chat. He's got a great Instagram profile. I think he sources cars for the film industry and stunt stuff. So he's always got some interesting stuff going on. Local guy, Paul Prestland, has sponsored us a beer. Thank you very much, Paul.
Yep.
Another local, a mate of mine, Chris Cesars. He's again another beer. And then lastly, over to the US for a pizza is Nick Taylor. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, we've got quite a few new patrons this last 2 or 3 weeks. Everybody must be enticed by the watch giveaway that we've got coming up into. I can't say the word. What's the word? Not intermittently.
Imminently.
That's the word. Excuse my English. So yeah, when's that hitting, Lee? That's going to be pretty soon, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, Andy. I will pull my finger out and get that done this week. I pinky promise.
Good lad. Because
we should probably mention, shouldn't we, for anyone that's missed it, isn't it? Because it's a Nezumi roof collaboration. I can never say that word very well. And they are fully sold out. It's one of 200, and they are fully sold out. So this is probably the last chance to get one, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think actually quite a few of our listeners bought a watch as well. So yeah, good on you guys.
I hear there's a good overs market for them already.
There probably is. They're bloody gorgeous, aren't they? And we've also, on the subject of Patreons, we're going to do something a little bit different next week. So we have realised, as the more studious among our listeners might also realise, that we've not actually done a panelist type episode for series 2 yet. We did a few in series 1, didn't we? So our shows were either full-blown interviews with people, chats amongst ourselves, the three of us, or we'd do panelists where we'd essentially get a 4th or 5th person on sometimes to chat through the subjects with us. And we've not done that for series 2 yet. So we're going to do it next week, and we are going to get a Patreon member on. We don't know who yet. We've got a rough idea, but if this works and is successful, then going forward, we are going to do it 2 or 3 times a series and lucky dip Patreon members, basically, to get them on.
Or backhanders.
Yeah, always always happy to accept a brown envelope. Absolutely. We've discussed this many times. But so that'll be a really, really cool thing because, as we always say on the podcast, everybody's got a story to tell. And it's nice to get the views and inputs of other people as well on certain topics.
Yeah. Cool.
Definitely.
Cool.
Excellent.
Until then.
On that note,
indeed. See you next week. Cheers now.
You've been listening to Road to Redline, the #1 Porsche and Car podcast, fueled by our generous Patreons. If you'd like to join in supporting the podcast, please see patreon.com/Road to Redline and find us on Instagram.